The top students in the world tend to do some of the very same things. What are the things that the best college students in the world do? Stay tuned. We'll talk about it. Hey guys, my name is Michael Thompson. I'm a youth pastor and a student, and on this channel, we discuss personal and professional development from a Christian perspective. And like I said, we're talking about what the best students in the world do. And I'm taking these tips from a guy named Cal Newport. He wrote this book, How to Win at College, and the subtitle is Surprising Secrets for Success from the Country's Top Students. You guys that watch the channel know that I'm a huge Cal Newport fan, and I believe this is one of the first books that he wrote, and it was when he was in his early 20s. He may have actually still been a student when he wrote this book, but he went around and talked to some of the best students, and he noticed that they weren't necessarily stressed out, and they had some advantages, and he put all those different things that those students do into a book, and these are the tips. So we're going to make this a several-part series, and this is part one. And we're going to go through the first 10 tips that he gives from the country's top students. Tip number one, do not do all your reading. You may have thought you heard me wrong, but you didn't. Cal Newport says that the best students don't do all the reading that's assigned to them. Now, when I was in college, I had to sign something saying that I read all of the assignment. And if that's the case, obviously, if you're going to ethically sign that on a quiz, then you need to do all the reading. But a lot of times reading has different parts that you don't necessarily need to know. If you've watched this channel before, you know I've talked about reading the conclusion before you read the chapter, and the first and last sentence of every single paragraph contain the main ideas. I actually used this tip recently because I'm taking a class next month, and I had to read and critique 6 different books before the class started. And I was reading about a concept that I really have read a couple books on, and it wasn't that complex of a concept. And so I didn't read all the different parts of the chapter. I read the first and the last sentence of the paragraph, and I got the main idea on some of those chapters that I knew the basic concept. So in general, you should do your reading, but if you've already read on this topic before and you have a bunch of pages that are being assigned, man, you can read that first and last sentence of each paragraph and really focus on the conclusion, and you'll get the main idea. The second tip is create a Sunday ritual. A Sunday ritual is where you look at the week ahead and you plan what you're going to do in every hour of the next week. If you do this, you're not going to get blindsided, and the projects you have coming up, you can time block when you're going to work on those. And the big idea is that you have a plan for the next week. Now, it's really helpful to do this like on a Sunday afternoon when you're not in the middle of the week and you're not in a rush. And you can look at, see, okay, what's due each day of the week, and how am I going to get those things done? That way you don't have to come the day before and have a massive reading project due and a big report that you have in a different class. And it helps you keep your different classes balanced as well. So on Sunday afternoon, sit down, look at your calendar for the next week, and line yourself out to make sure that you're going to have everything done on time, and so that you don't get any blind spots and so you don't miss any assignments. One of my teachers always told me to keep my eye on the next 2 weeks. So create a Sunday ritual. Tip 3, drop classes every semester. I don't agree with all the tips in this book. This is one of them that I don't agree with. He says that you should only take the very most important classes and then drop all the rest. He talks about like the way that you can keep your GPA up is by only taking the core classes. And I kind of had a different approach to college. I wasn't as concerned about my GPA as I was getting my money's worth out of the learning opportunities that I had. So I took a lot of classes whenever I was in college, and I didn't just take the core classes, but I wasn't necessarily trying to keep a high GPA so that I could get into med school or so that I could get into another program. But if you are trying to keep a really, really high GPA, then yes, only take the required classes and drop all the other classes that aren't important every semester. Tip 4, start long-term projects the day that they are assigned. And one of the ways you can do that is just by creating a document. If you know that you have a 20-page paper, create a document ahead of time. If you know that you have a large reading project, create the document whenever the project is assigned. That way, you're going to be able to have a little bit of momentum in that area. And you can also go and check books out of the library the day that the project's assigned. That way, you don't have any excuses. Caution on checking books out of the library before you read them is that you can check them out. And I had friends before that would check books out and then they would just sit on their shelf the next 3 weeks and they didn't actually open them. So if you're going to check a book out, be courteous about the other people who might need that book as well, and actually check it out so that you read it right away. Another thing that you can do to start on your project right away is to listen to a podcast or a YouTube video that talks about the topic that you're going to have to research or that you're going to give a presentation on. That has really helped me a lot in college because it gets the wheels turning and it gets me thinking creatively on the the type of project that I'm going to have to do, and it keeps the momentum going. So start the project the day that it's assigned. You don't necessarily have to read a bunch that same day, but start listening to audiobooks or to podcasts or to YouTube videos so that you can get an idea for where you're going. Tip number 5, make your bed. And the reason why he says to make your bed is you start the day off with a win, and you also present yourself with the visual that you're an organized person. And if making your bed is the first thing that you do in the morning, then you're setting yourself up for a day where you're taking control of your day rather than your day taking control of you. And in general, there's two kinds of people. People that let their circumstances control them, and the people that control their circumstances. And making your bed might seem like a little thing that's not that important, but if it's something that you do consistently, you know that it sets your day up with some momentum moving in the right direction. Tip number 6 is apply to 10 scholarships a year. And at the private school that I went to, they didn't actually accept scholarship money from the government because, like, if the government can give the school money, then the government has some say in what the school does because there's the threat to not give that money anymore. And sometimes schools will build up reliance on that money that the government's giving. And so I wasn't really in the same position to apply to a bunch of scholarships, but there were internal scholarships where like businesses would give to the school and you could apply. And so I did apply to those. But if you're going to a public university or somewhere that does accept government funding, it's a huge opportunity to apply to scholarships and make sure that you're doing that consistently so that you can stay out of debt. And then even if you aren't just going into debt and you can get a scholarship, then you can pocket your work money instead of your work money going towards your school if you're paying your own way. Apply to scholarships. I agree with that tip. That's a good one. Tip number 7 is build study systems. You guys who have been on this channel know that I advocate for a 2-week study system where you study for 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and then you evaluate after the first week to see where are you at, and you would make adjustments for the second week. That system's really helpful because it doesn't put a ton of time right away into studying, and you can look at all the material. That's also important. When you first start studying for a test, look at all the material that's going to be on the test. Don't get bogged down in one section because then you may miss another section that has a lot of memorization, and you were unaware of that until right before the test. So 2-week system, 20 minutes a day. In my graduate classes, I've studied a lot more than 20 minutes a day, but in a bachelor's degree class, for the most part, if it's a 3 credit hour class, that's usually enough time. If you use active recall and you're studying, remember active recall is where you study through questions. Instead of just passively reading the material, you write out questions over the material, and the way that you study is by practicing testing yourself. And that's the way that your brain works. You learn much faster. But if you have a study system, then your studying gets to go on autopilot. You don't have to worry about, oh, am I going to be ready for this test? No, you have a system and you have an evaluation time halfway through. You know, after a week, you say, okay, is this enough time? Do I need to study more, or do I need to, is this good? And if you follow that system, you're going to be set up for success much better. If you don't follow that system, have some sort of system, and preferably it's more than a week so that you're not preparing last minute and getting all stressed out. However you do it, make sure that you have a system. And at the beginning of the semester, man, plan that system for the next foreseeable future until the end of the semester. At the beginning of the semester, usually I'll sit down and say, okay, if I have 4 tests in this class, I know that my study system is 2 weeks out. And then I mark the day that that system needs to start. Do this, have a study system. It doesn't have to be the same as mine, but make sure that you have some kind of a system that you do for all your tests. Tip number 8, befriend a professor. This is also very helpful because if you know a professor, then you can ask questions, you can hear from them and know that the way that they think. Some schools have a philosophy where the professors aren't really trying to invest in the students, and that's something that's good to be aware of before you go somewhere. If you're going to a state university that's just really large, or maybe a school that is focused more on research than they are on actually educating the undergrad students, you can probably be in a situation where the teachers aren't really trying to invest in you, or you can go to other schools where that is their philosophy. Whatever the case is, if the school's philosophy is teachers invest in students, it might not be as difficult for you to befriend a professor. But if you're in a situation where the school is more focused on research, then you might have to put yourself out there a little bit. But the point is, if you can know a professor, you can know the way that they think, and then they've been doing this for a while, so you're going to be able to understand the way that the whole college system works and the way that they test. If you understand the way that a professor tests, you're set up very well for the class, and you're going to be able to have a much smoother experience. So if you befriend a professor, you're going to be able to just be better off in so many regards. So make sure that you are friends with a professor. Tip number 9, become a club president. This one I disagree with, but it depends, because my experience was that I was working at a church the whole time that I was in school, and I had lots of opportunities to take leadership positions and work with people. And so I didn't really spend a lot of time in the clubs, or they called them collegians where I went to school. I didn't spend a lot of time in those because I had the opportunity to do leadership stuff somewhere else. But if you don't have a internship, or if you don't have a job or a place that you volunteer when you are in college, it is really, really good for you to be involved in a club. Do something that's outside of just going to class and listening to lectures, because some of the things that are going to make you really, really good at your job, it's not just a bunch of knowledge. It's also social skills, being able to lead people, being able to empathize, all those things you're going to get from taking a leadership position in some capacity. So becoming a club president, I do agree with, but it depends on your situation. The point is, have more responsibility than just going to class when you're in school, and you will come out of college a much different person and a whole bunch of different skills if you do that. Tip number 10, read a newspaper every day. And I am indifferent on this one. I think that reading a newspaper every day can be helpful, but at the same time, you don't want to put too much on your plate. You want to set reasonable expectations for when you're in college. And it's one thing to say, I'm going to read the newspaper when I'm bored, but it's another thing to say this has to be done every single day. Because if you're not careful, you'll have too many things that you're trying to accomplish instead of keeping the main thing, which is your classes and your studying. And at the end of the day, you only have so many hours that you're at school anyways. So those hours could probably be put back into a class instead of put into reading a newspaper. But I do like the concept of reading a newspaper, because if you're able to read a newspaper, man, you got things under control. And if you've been to college before, you know that most students are just stressed out and living by the minute and late and just depressed, all these different things, because they have a lot of work that's becoming due, and they did not get on top of their circumstances. They allowed their circumstances to get on top of them. That's the normal. But if you're reading a newspaper, man, that tells me that you are not stressed and you're killing it. So if that's your experience, man, you're on top of your circumstances like that, go for it, read a newspaper. But at the end of the day, you only have so much time, and this is one that, do it if you want to, but I'm not necessarily all about it. All right, guys, this is the first video on how to win at college. Take these tips, use some, leave some, and we'll see you in the next one.